A young man signs a contract. 30 years of future labor disappears with a single signature. A family buys a home they cannot fully afford. A student borrows money for education. A government borrows billions it does not currently possess. And somehow, modern civilization treats this as normal. Human beings built entire societies around one extraordinary idea: the ability to spend the future before it arrives. That idea is called debt. Today, debt shapes almost every part of modern life. People borrow for homes, education, businesses, healthcare, survival. Companies borrow to expand. Governments borrow to function. Entire economies depend on borrowing continuously. And yet, despite debt controlling modern civilization so deeply, very few people stop to ask a strange question. Why did human beings invent debt in the first place? For most of human history, survival depended on immediate resources: food, animals, tools, land. If a farmer lacked seeds during planting season, survival itself became uncertain. But human beings noticed something important early in civilization. Sometimes people needed resources now, in order to produce more resources later. A farmer might borrow grain during a difficult season and repay it after harvest. A merchant might borrow goods to trade elsewhere. Debt was born from one powerful human idea: trust in the future. Long before modern banks existed, ancient civilizations already created debt systems. In Mesopotamia over 4,000 years ago, clay tablets recorded loans involving grain, silver, livestock. Some historians believe debt may actually be older than money itself, because even before formal currency existed, humans still borrowed resources from one another. And once borrowing appeared, civilization changed forever. Debt accelerated human progress dramatically. Without borrowing, many people could only grow as fast as their current resources allowed. Debt changed this. Now people could build larger farms, expand trade, construct cities, finance exploration. Civilization itself began pulling future productivity into the present, and perhaps this became one of humanity's most powerful inventions. But debt also introduced something dangerous: obligation. Once a person owes the future, freedom changes psychologically. The borrower now lives partly under pressure from tomorrow. Ancient societies understood this danger clearly. In some civilizations, unpaid debts could lead to imprisonment, slavery, loss of land, loss of freedom. Debt was not simply financial, it became moral and social. A person who failed repayment could lose status, reputation, and independence. Even ancient kings feared the instability debt could create. Some rulers periodically cancelled debts entirely because overwhelming debt threatened social collapse. If too many farmers lost land or freedom, civilizations became unstable. Thousands of years later, societies still struggle with this same problem. Then came banking. Originally, banks were relatively simple institutions. People deposited valuables for safekeeping, but bankers noticed something fascinating. Most people did not withdraw all their money simultaneously. So banks began lending deposited money to others, while still promising depositors access to their funds. This transformed civilization permanently. Because suddenly economies no longer depended only on existing money. Banks could create credit, and credit expanded economic activity enormously. This system fueled trade, industrialization, infrastructure, business growth, technological development. Modern civilization accelerated rapidly through debt. Skyscrapers, factories, railroads, corporations. Much of modern civilization was built using borrowed money. But debt changed human psychology too. A person carrying debt often experiences life differently emotionally. Debt creates stress, pressure, future anxiety, survival fear. Because debt transforms time psychologically, the future no longer feels open. Part of it already belongs to someone else. Perhaps this is why debt feels emotionally heavy, even when invisible. A digital number inside a banking system can influence sleep, relationships, self-worth, mental health. Debt exists partly inside psychology itself. Modern economies intensified this dramatically. Today, debt became normalized almost everywhere. People borrow for houses, education, vehicles, emergencies, lifestyles. Entire generations enter adulthood already financially obligated, and governments themselves now operate through enormous debt systems. Some nations owe trillions of dollars. Numbers so large the human brain barely processes them emotionally anymore. This raises an uncomfortable question. How can the entire world owe more money than physically exists? Because modern debt systems no longer operate like simple ancient borrowing. Modern banking creates money largely through lending itself. When banks issue loans, new money effectively enters circulation digitally. Modern economies increasingly run on future promises. This system works as long as people continue believing debts will be repaid, economies will grow, institutions remain stable. Once again, trust becomes central, just like money itself. Debt also transformed capitalism fundamentally. Modern economies depend heavily on consumption, and debt allows consumption to happen immediately instead of gradually. People buy now, pay later. This accelerates economic growth dramatically, but it also creates dependence. Advertising intensified this further. Modern society constantly encourages upgrading, consuming, borrowing, financing. People increasingly purchase lifestyles before fully possessing the resources to support them, and slowly, debt became psychologically normalized. A teenager may begin adulthood with educational debt, then housing debt, car payments, credit cards, and before realizing it, decades of future labor become financially committed already. Perhaps this is why many modern workers feel trapped psychologically. Debt quietly shapes freedom itself. Still, debt is not purely destructive. Without debt, many people would never start businesses, buy homes, access education, survive financial emergencies. Debt can create opportunity. It can accelerate progress. Civilization itself may not have developed this rapidly without borrowing systems, but debt also concentrates power. Those controlling lending systems often influence governments, economies, industries, populations. Throughout history, financial power repeatedly became political power, because controlling debt often means influencing the future behavior of entire societies. Perhaps this explains why financial crises become so dangerous historically. When debt systems weaken, banks collapse, businesses fail, unemployment rises, panic spreads, because modern civilization depends deeply on confidence in future repayment. Debt ties entire economies together psychologically. The 2008 financial crisis revealed this dramatically. Millions lost homes, banks collapsed, global markets panicked, and beneath the crisis existed one central force: debt. Specifically, debt people could no longer repay. The modern world suddenly remembered something ancient, civilizations already understood. Debt creates growth, but excessive debt creates fragility. Now humanity enters another financial transformation. Digital banking, artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, buy now, pay later systems. Debt continues evolving rapidly, and increasingly, borrowing becomes frictionless. A person can enter financial obligation within seconds through a smartphone. No physical cash, no visible transaction, only invisible promises about the future. Perhaps this is the strangest thing about debt. Human beings invented systems capable of pulling future labor into the present moment. Debt allows civilization to spend tomorrow today, and this power became so useful that modern civilization built entire economies around it. But maybe the deeper question is not whether debt is good or bad. Perhaps the deeper question is, what happens psychologically to human beings when entire societies become permanently obligated to the future? Because in the end, debt may not simply be financial. Debt may be one of the most powerful psychological systems humanity ever created. A system built from trust, obligation, time, fear, ambition, hope all at once. And perhaps that is why debt became so deeply connected to civilization itself, because debt reflects something fundamentally human, the belief that tomorrow can be shaped before it arrives. So perhaps the real story of debt is not about money alone. Perhaps it is about humanity's endless attempt to control the future itself.